Hi everyone, Stepan here. I'm gonna show you my last round game from the Vrsar Open, and I faced an opponent who has only started playing recently but is pretty good. And he plays f4 with white and plays the Dutch with black. He defeated my friend Vlatko, who has way more experience in the horsefly bird, so f4 knight h6. So he has a lot of experience with these aggressive openings, and as you may know, I've been playing the Dutch and the bird myself. So I was trying to find something tricky to beat the Dutch with, and I came up with the Raphael variation. So after f5, you play this very, very aggressive knight c3, and after knight f6, you play bishop g5. Now this is, in my opinion, the trickiest way to play against the Dutch, and if black doesn't know the theory here, they could be in trouble. So one example, my opponent plays the classical Dutch the majority of the time, and if he plays e6, then white goes e4, taking is forced, h6 loses, so takes, knight takes, bishop e7, bishop takes, and I was gonna play queen h5 check, where after g6 you go queen h6, and now even though this is only plus 0.4 or something for white, I've been analyzing this extensively while preparing for the game, and Milan is a FIDE master who's my friend, have found several ways to destroy black from here. The most obvious is, well, what if they take the pawn? Then you castle queenside, and even the engine gives +3 here. There's just, I don't know, knight c6, knight f3. Look at white's pieces. Look at black's king. This is over. However, there is a way to play against the Raphael Dutch, the knight c3 bishop g5 variation, which, you know, gives black a solid game, and that's d5. So now we're going to be playing a positional game, a long positional game, and it's going to be completely unlike the variations we've seen before. Of course, I have prepared for this as well. So bishop f6, ef6, e3, and white is playing for the structure. White is playing for, you know, weakening d5 later on, putting pressure on f5 with ideas like bishop d3 and knight e2, knight f4 if the bishop comes to e6. It's going to be a slow grind from here. My opponent knew the next move, bishop e6. I played bishop d3, and here he surprised me. He played bishop b4, which is a move I've never, ever seen before. There are two moves here. Knight c6, which is, in my opinion, the best move, and queen d7, which makes a ton of sense. You could also play c6, but it may not be necessary yet. In any case, bishop b4 is a very, very strange move, and it has been played in one game where Luc Van Wiely defeated Ladislav Salai. Luc Van Wiely is a grandmaster, of course, and the other guy, I haven't heard of him. White ended up winning the game. And I played knight e2 here, which is the best move. Now, the idea behind knight e2 is, first of all, you don't allow your knight to be taken. Secondly, you want to go knight f4, and if the bishop goes to f7, you take the pawn on f5. If the bishop goes to d7, well, then you take the pawn on d5. So my opponent played c6. And here I spent a long time thinking. I ended up playing what I think is a suboptimal move, and there was a very easy way forward, but I was kind of in this mindset that bishop c3, bc3 followed by c4 would give black a relatively easy game, so I didn't want to allow that, and I ended up playing a3, which is a mistake. Of course, black should not take on c3. What I should have done is my original plan of playing knight f4, and it's very, very hard for black to do anything. For example, bishop d7 loses immediately. Okay, this I didn't see during the game. This I had found during analysis. If bishop d7, then queen h5 check, and the game is over. Because either I pick up the pawn, let's say, I don't know, king e7, or if g6, I just take the rook. So let's say king e7, bishop f5, and I'm just up a pawn for nothing. G6 doesn't work because I play bishop G6 and the rook's hanging twice. H6, knight G6 check. On knight F4, if bishop F7, then I just take. And queen E7, which is the most sensible move, fails to knight E6, queen E6, because now, after I play queen F3, black's going to have to go G6, or after I castle and prepare queen F3, eventually black's going to have to go G6. So let's say G6 here, knight E2, castles, and maybe B3, C4 from here seems very strong. White is significantly better, and I can see it now. I did not see it during the game. So against C6 I played A3, which isn't the best move, but it's okay. It's not like white's not better. Bishop D6, and here I made another mistake. Now my next mistake is pretty significant. Again, I should have gone knight F4, which was the idea behind A3. I wanted to go knight A4. I didn't want to allow bishop C3. Had I gone knight F4 here, then, bishop F4 is pretty much forced. And the difference between this variation and the one when the bishop was on B4 is that black, of course, cannot take. EF4, significant advantage for white. We're playing against this bishop. And let's say castles, queen d6, rook e1, knight d7. I always have h4 undermining this structure with g6 if g6 is played. But I played knight g3, which is definitely suboptimal. And now white is no longer better. You could argue that white's worse, because my knight is completely offside. My opponent played g6, and my intention was to play h4 straight away. But of course, if I play h4 straight away, then maybe bishop g3 is playable. So I got really scared of this. Bishop g3, fg3, h5, castles. What do I have here? This seemed very, very weird. Of course I have knight e2, knight f4, but at some point g5 may come. I didn't like this. The engine says equal, but I couldn't assess it properly. So after g6, I first played knight ce2. And my idea was to go h4 next. Queen c7, okay, that doesn't really change much. Now I want to go rook c1 and c4. So I played queen d2 and b3. And I want to prepare c4. I want to be able to recapture with the pawn. So, okay. My opponent played b6, which I didn't understand. I don't understand this. Maybe he wants to go c5, but after c4, c5 simply doesn't work. If you play c5 here, I can go knight c3, or I can castle, or I can go rook c1. Probably knight c3 is best. Knight c3, dc4, knight b5, and I've gained access to b5. So I don't think b6 makes sense because c5 is unplayable. Then he played a5, and I was really surprised to see this move, because it does create quite a few weaknesses, and it allows b4, which is, a pawn break that's going to disrupt the queen side, especially since the rook on a8 is undefended. Not that I have anything concrete now, but a5 seemed like a weakening move to me. I played queen c1. I wanted to defend my rook, and I wanted to prepare b4 in some cases, or cd, where the queen isn't, able to the queen isn't defended. So b4 in conjunction with cd would leave the queen hanging if black takes on b4 twice. So he played rook c8, a sensible move, and now finally h4. I want to go h5. If I go h5, then I have a great advantage. I don't think maybe h5 by black isn't forced, but let's say, let's say black makes a nothing move, a waiting move, then h5 is clearly winning, because now your rook's hanging, the pawn's hanging, this pawn is hanging. So let's say rook g8, and now just knight f4, and you're getting overwhelmed. Bishop f7, hg, cd, and so forth. So on h4, my opponent, of course, played h5. Okay, it's time to bring the king to safety, castles, and my opponent played queen b8, unpinning or moving away from the c-file and attacking my queen. Fine. Now here I missed an opportunity that I mean, the engine says it's great for white. It hadn't even crossed my mind, and it took me a while to appreciate it, even with the engine. So the engine plays b4 here, sacrificing a pawn. And if AB, bishop b4 is not playable. If bishop b4, I go knight f4, and you're not defending everything. I don't understand why b4 is so important for that. So, I mean, I do. It distracts the bishop from f4, but still. So in this position, after knight f4, say bishop f7, cd, cd, and queen b1. Now we're attacking the bishop. Let's say bishop d6. I go queen b5. Bishop f4, ef4, gf5. No, sorry, bishop f4, ef4. I don't know what black should do. But let's say, I don't know, queen c7, rook fe1 check. If they castle, I just take the knight. So they have to defend the knight. Now rook fe1, king f8. Now there's bishop takes f5. I mean, this is really, really difficult to see. So b4 never crossed my mind. The idea is pretty simple. You want to regain control over f4. You want to not allow black to trade on f4, because knight f4 is a very serious threat. Okay, instead I took on d5, and I saw that this variation is extremely interesting. Firstly, if my opponent ever takes with the pawn, I go queen d2 or queen b2, and then I can go b4, again distracting this bishop, and this is going to be a permanent weakness. However, after cd5, my opponent played bishop d5, which I had been expecting, and originally I'd intended to break the position open with e4 straight away, so I ended up investing a significant amount of time here. Can you please calculate e4? I hope you paused the video. So once again, b4 is the best idea. b4, ab, bishop b, knight f4, bishop f7, bishop a6, rook c7, bishop c4, and the engine says white is significantly better. But e4 is definitely better than what I ended up doing. fe4, forced, otherwise you lose the f-pawn. Okay, knight e4. Now, the bishop is attacked, the pawn is attacked. If you play, I don't know, bishop e7, then I have knight f4, and the game is really over, because if bishop f7, then rook e1, and everything is hanging. So on knight e4, my opponent would have taken bishop e4. And after bishop e4, you have to defend g6. If you go king f7, I just take on c6. If you go f5, I just take on c6. And I'm up a pawn. Not to mention that my influence over the dark squares is extremely strong. Unfortunately, there was another variation I was looking at, which is good. The engine gives it as almost as strong as e4, which is bishop c4. And I wanted to get rid of this bishop. I want to get rid of this bishop because it's holding black's position together. Now, I should say that if bishop takes pawn, queen takes, this is trouble for black. Probably king f8 or queen c7. Let's say king f8, e4, and now I'm breaking through. And this should be close to winning. My opponent played b5, forcing me to take, which I was happy to do. Takes, takes, queen d2. And now I'm just playing against this long-term weakness, and if I can ever manage to get my knight to d3, and my other knight to e2, infiltrate on c5, and infiltrate on f4, then I think I'll be strategically winning, so that was my plan. And of course, I'd been hoping that my opponent would, do something, let's say, I don't know, queen b6, that I could then go knight c3 and knight takes d5. So that was my first hope. The other hope was, well, what if I go queen d3 and they, let's say, play king f7 or castle? Once again, I have knight c3, or I have rook d1 followed by f3, e4 breaking through. So that was one idea. But my opponent played a move that changed my plans completely. He played a very committal move. Of course, the a pawn is hanging, so they have to do something. He played the best move, b4. And I couldn't decide between a4 and ab4. I think they are very different. The engine prefers ab4. Bishop b4 is losing, which I did not see. I still don't understand why. They have to take queen b4. On bishop b4, I go queen d1, and say on castles, I go knight f4. And of course, this is a double attack, so that doesn't work. And on king f7, I go knight f4 nevertheless. And now they have to defend the pawn. So let's say queen d6, which looks appealing, queen f3. Knight b6, you have to defend, knight g2. All of my pieces are coming in. And this is a big advantage, which I did not see. So I played a4, which is good enough. White has an advantage. My opponent played king f7. I played rook ac1. Of course, while the bishop remains on d6, I have no way to play knight f4 unless I manage to transfer my knight to d3. So I was going to do that, but I didn't really want to play knight c1, allowing rook c3. So had I tried to bring my knight to d3 and the other knight to e2 and play knight f4, firstly, g5 could become playable at some point. Secondly, as soon as I move my knight away, rook c3 is a devastating threat. So basically, my knight needs to remain on e2. So I played rook ac1. My opponent played rook h8, which is a waste of tempo. So I exchanged rooks, and I thought the endgame was more promising for me, which is true. But still, against a low-rated opponent, I shouldn't have risked trading the major pieces off. I took on c8, played rook c1. My opponent took, I took with the queen, he played queen c7. And I thought queen c7 was a blunder. If you can hear thunder, there's going to be rain after about a month, so I'm happy. Here, I exchanged the queens off immediately. I just thought the endgame was better for me. Why? Well, if I can ever get my knight to c5, which seems likely, then knight b7 is devastating. So I figured, I'm going to outplay my opponent. King f1, knight f8, king e1, knight e6, and my opponent found the best plan. Knight f8, knight e6 is great, and I absolutely have to play f4 here, because if f4 comes, I have nothing, and therefore I played f4, which of course is the best move. If I don't, let's say king d2, then f4, and black could be better. Black probably is better. I don't know what to do here. So basically I cannot allow f4. So I played f4. Knight g7, preparing g5, another excellent move, because now the f5 pawn is defended. And I was struggling to find a plan here. I didn't really know what to do. My knight is definitely misplaced. With the knight on g7, g5 is possible whether I have a knight on g3 or not. So my knight needs to get back into the game. I wanted the knight on f3 or on d3, so I played knight f1. g5. I could go for a draw here if I wanted to. If I go g3, the game is just drawn, and there's no way to make progress for either side. Let's say takes. That's it. That's the end. My opponent may be able to infiltrate on, excuse me, I may sneeze, on g4. But that seems very unlikely. He would have to reroute the knight like this, something like this. But even so, I may be able to just take, and if he does that, if he starts moving the knight, then I can just bring my knight to g3 and put pressure on both pawns. So on g5, I didn't want to go g3. The only way to keep winning chances alive was to trade fg. Of course, this is only a temporary pawn sacrifice because my opponent can now go king g6. And I think this was my second longest think of the game. Knight f4 is, you know, the idea that stands out. I could go g3. g3, king g5, knight d2 seemed tempting, followed by knight f3 and knight e5. But knight f4 was more concrete, and knight f4 is the best move. Okay, bishop f4 has to take. If king g5, then I just take on d5. And the problem is that my opponent has knight e6, which is a double attack. Now I only have one move, otherwise I lose. I have to play g3, my opponent takes on d4, and once again I only have one move, knight d2, defending the pawn. And from here, my opponent can, you know, wait, delay h4, but h4 is the only way forward, so he played it straight away. With very little time on the clock, my opponent's technique in this endgame was very good. Congratulations to him for that. Now I have to take. I could conceivably play king f2 and get away with it, but h3 is coming, and I just didn't want to deal with the passed pawn on h3. That seemed very, very dangerous. So I took, and the only move for my opponent to stay in the game is knight e6, because now f4 has been undefended. If king h5, now I'm winning. King f2, let's say, I don't know, king h4, that's it, knight f3, and this is a winning king and pawn endgame. Just, that's it. My opponent can never play king h3. My opponent can never take on f4. If something like d4, I just go g6, and, you know, I'm queening, so he has to play king h5. Now I just pick up the pawn. I go like this, take the pawn. So, knight e6 only move. He found it, of course. And now I could have I could have gone knight f3, but I couldn't calculate everything precisely. Remember, this is the last round of the tournament, and after having played for a week, you're not as fresh as during the first rounds, but I gave it my best. I tried to figure out whether knight f3 was a better attempt. Knight f3, knight f4, of course. And now knight d4, or sorry, knight e5 or knight d4, defending the pawn. And knight g2, he's going to take this pawn, king f2, knight h4, and knight c6. And I reached this position, and I couldn't figure out whether my a pawn is going to be strong enough. So say king g5, knight a5, king f4, knight c6, knight f3, a5, knight g5, knight takes b5? Is that good enough? I didn't think so. Now, after, you know, analyzing, it turns out it was another end trap. Sorry, I don't know if you know that episode, but when Michael finds the radon detection kits that Toby leaves in the office, and then he finds another one and says, upon further examination, it turns out it was another end trap. That's probably my favorite part of the American Office. In any case, this is equal. With the engine, it's very easy to conclude so. So I ended up playing king f2. My opponent took on f4, played king f3, knight e6, and king g3. And now I knew that it was a draw. d4 never leads anywhere because my h4 pawn is immune, and I'm holding on to d2. King h5, knight f3, f4, king f2, and knight g7. The knight's coming to f5, king g2, knight f5, and I just played king f2. My opponent had under a minute and almost took the pawn, I swear. Of course, if he takes the pawn, I'm just queening my g-pawn, so he cannot do that. I actually offered the draw after king f2. I shouldn't have. He might have taken had I not offered the draw. And yeah, here after knight g7, king g2, knight f5, king f2, we drew the game. I should just mention that if d4 is played, I don't really have to do anything. I can go king e2, I don't know. If the king comes to g4, I can go back to f2. If d3, then I have knight e5, and it's a very easy draw. King h4, g6, d2, let's say, knight f3, and it's just going to be a draw. King h5, knight d2, king g6, king f3, and on king g5, I check and pick up the pawn. So we drew the game. Of course, I wasn't happy because, you know, my opponent's lower rated than me. I was having a good tournament. I wanted to finish with a win. Unfortunately, I couldn't. My opponent played a really, really good game, and despite only playing for maybe a year, I'm not sure, he seems to have very good technique. So congratulations to Josip. I hope he does well in all his future endeavors. I will see you in the next one. I have to show you one league game that I played, and then we are on to the Pula Open, which is a tournament that finished about 2 weeks ago. Thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for more chess. Bye bye.